Whether you keep them in your home or love to see them in theirs, these are the creatures that bring us all together.
Reptiles. We're going to be delving into the experiences of reptile lovers from around the block and around the world. This is the Reptile Talk Podcast. What's up, everybody? This is Jeremy Turgeon from Brassman Reptiles.
And I'm Rob, and I'm keeping it real.
And this is episode 33.
Wow.
And we have a super awesome guest. Who is it, Rob?
It's a special guest from the podcast realm. We got Eric Burke from EB Morelia. How you doing tonight, man?
Oh, pretty good, man. Pretty good. You guys, man, such excitement. Woo!
Come on, when you're talking about reptiles, that's like
Pumped up, man.
Yeah,
Woo!
hell yeah.
It's true. Dude, I just have Carpet Fest vibes.
Yes.
We fucking missed it. So now I'm like, woo!
We got our own little personal carpet fest.
That's
The
right.
That's
ending
right.
Won't be the same.
It's mini, but it's worth it.
Yeah, and nobody has to jump off your fucking roof.
Ooh.
We call that wheelering it.
Yeah.
That's fucking great.
If you don't know, now you know.
Yes, that's right.
All right, so Eric, for the people who might not know you or the kind of things that where you've been at and what you're doing, how did you kind of get your start with reptiles?
Well, so this is my ball python story for you guys.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I went to the Natural History Museum in Philadelphia, and there was they were showing like various animals. You know how they kind of do that, and they show different animals and such. And they pulled out this snake, and it was a ball python. And I was in kindergarten, and you know it wanted somebody to come up and touch it, put it around their neck, that type of thing. And you know I was just like, everybody else was scared to death, but like I just wanted to hold that snake.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom's saying to me, like, you know, no, I don't think that's a good idea. I'm like, come on, I want to hold the snake, you know. Always the moms, man. The moms are always like poo-pooing the snake keeping, you know. Like,
It's
lizards
kinda
are okay. But, oh, moms. Anyway, yeah, I held it, and that was kind of it. And then it just snowballed from there.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why I have a special spot in my heart for pythons in general. You know, I often wonder, like, what makes you a boa person or a python person or a colubrid person? Like, what is it that, like, as you're coming up, you decide this is where I want to go, you know?
Yeah, because it feels like there isn't a lot of people who like branch out and do all of them. It's like you either are like a python person or you're a boa person or a colubrid person, and there's not a lot of people who like span all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, man, and then you know, in my 20s, I got into music and you know, playing guitar, playing in bands and stuff like that. So I really didn't have time. So I got out of it till I was about 30, which is kind of like seems to be the trend, you know, from like. Most people kind of like leave it for a little bit, whether they're going off to college or whatever, you know. And once I got a house, then you realize that you can like keep whatever you want, you know.
Exactly.
Pandora's box has been opened.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're like, wait, I can have whatever I want, yeah. And
Yeah.
it just kind of snowballed. So.
You mean if I put snakes in the spare room, my in-laws won't show up?
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's freaking awesome. And then so you have also you're in the podcasting game as well, and you guys you and Owen run NPR, Morelia Python Radio, and then you've also started to branch out and do a couple other podcasts as well. So why don't you talk about a little bit about how those kind of came to fruition?
So I've always been a fan of Reptile Radio. I thought it was the greatest thing ever. You know, I mean, like, and again, all they really talked about was ball pythons, but I didn't care. You know, it was just somebody talking about reptiles, and you could take a lot of what they talked about and like apply it to whatever you're doing. You know, But at that time, I started. I found Morelia, and I was kind of bummed because it didn't seem like, I would be, if you listen back to the old episodes, like constantly sending Larry messages. Can you ask this question? Can you get this guest? And finally I had said to him, I said, would you be mad if I started my own podcast? Like because I didn't want to copy off of them, but I was like, would you be mad? But I want to focus on carpet pythons in Morelia because it seems like there's a lot of, misunderstandings about them and such. And he's like, hell no, man, but it's so weird. Like I had to ask permission to start a podcast back then.
It was a different time then.
Yeah. And that was 9 years ago this month, actually. And
wow.
Here we are 9 years later. So, I mean, the whole purpose was just to sort of give, at the time, carpet pythons and green tree pythons really weren't. And at the time, Morelia included scrub pythons, and it included Boland's pythons, and it included rough scale python. All the, in my opinion, all the cool pythons. But,
yes.
They didn't get a lot of attention, and I thought, like, man, wouldn't it be cool if people knew more about these snakes? So that's kind of how NPR started. And the recent ones, I've always wanted to do a podcast with my good friend Rob Stone. We've talked about it for years, and it seems like everybody, there's so many podcasts now, reptile podcasts, man. I can't keep up with all of them, like,
that's true, yeah.
It's so many, but I wanted to do something completely different than anybody has done. I didn't want to do like the interview style like we did on NPR. I wanted to do something where it was like informational, but sort of like Radio Lab. I don't know if you've ever heard that podcast, but it's sort of like they have like sound effects that go in between. It's like, I call it B-roll for audio,
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just wanted to do something different. So me and Rob decided that we were going to pick a species and we're going to focus on that species and like research it as much as possible, because I also wanted to push myself out of my comfort zone, like carpets and real, it's my zone, like I know that, but like I wanted to learn more about other stuff that I really didn't know about. So that's sort of where a student of the serpent came from, and really focusing on like natural history, and hopefully it'll make people understand some of the behaviors of these different species, and that, they ultimately they could be better keepers, for somebody that doesn't have time to sit down and like read a scientific paper and like that kind of stuff. And but yeah, that's that. And Owen's sort of doing one that's colubrid corner, kind of the same idea, but he's really just focusing on colubrids, or how he calls them colubrids. But
everybody says it very differently.
Yeah.
yeah. That's sort of like something that he doesn't really get to talk about too much on NPR, So, but I know he loves his giant colubrid. Ever since we went up, actually, when we went up to Nerd, and he saw, what was the snake he saw? Baron's Racer, maybe, or no?
Yeah, that or like a Ridley eye or something.
Yeah, I think it was Ridley eye. Yep.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh, I need this."
Oh, the first time that you hold a cave dwelling rat snake, you're like, "Oh, why haven't I had these my entire life? These things are freaking amazing."
Owen likes big things that bite,
It fits perfectly.
And if they bite you, they don't really mess you up. Like if a big retic bites you, it can mess you up. A big Ridley eye bites you, you're like, that kind of hurt a little bit. You're fine.
Yeah, it's very true. Yeah. No stitches from the Ridley eye.
No.
And we got a couple others that are in the works. We're working on a field herping podcast with Nipper Reed.
Yes.
Oh, very cool.
So that should be cool. That's sort of been like one of my, this COVID thing is really killing me, because I've missed 2 trips to Australia over the past year. So, but I'm hoping, things get back to normal and we can get back out there. So.
Well, that's okay. You know what? But you know what? That's okay, because now I can actually potentially catch up to the number of times you've been to Australia.
Yeah.
So we compromised actually this year. We went to West Texas, And I got to tell you, man, that was really cool. I was pleasantly surprised about how cool that herping trip was.
I dig it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been
Not
looking.
necessarily something that I would keep, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
really
Right.
cool to see in the wild.
Yeah,
different
I think
stuff
there's
about that.
definitely a divide when it comes to that of like things that you are interested in keeping and observing in your home, and then stuff that you like to field herp. Because like when I think about field herping, or when I think about when let me start over. When I'm thinking about what I want to keep in my home, if I can drive someplace and find it, I don't have a whole lot of interest in actually keeping it in my home because I'd rather just see it in its natural habitat. The,
100%.
the thing with the scrubs and the Borneos and stuff is like I'm not going to Borneo, every week. It's like it's not someplace I can go all the time. So like that's
Right.
going to be like a destination. I can go there a couple times maybe in my life, and then I have to just enjoy the animals for what they are in my home. But if I can go someplace and see black-tailed rattlesnakes in the wild, that's what I want to do. Like I can, coordinate a southwestern flight down to Arizona, twice a year if I really wanted to, or a couple times a year,
Yeah.
and go do
Oh,
that.
yeah.
So that's definitely how I feel. Like I've very rarely do I want to keep things that I could like drive someplace and see in the wild.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's like, I never understood the whole field herping thing when I was just coming back into reptiles. Like, why would you want to go take a trip and trudge through, whatever you're trudging through, and like when you can just see it at a reptile show. But like, you really, what I've learned doing it is like you can learn stuff that you cannot learn on any podcast, in any book, and you know what I mean? Just being in the environment and knowing what the humidity feels like and knowing what the heat feels like and knowing what, just how it feels when it's at nighttime and the temperature drops, or like, what does the rocky outcrop actually look like? And, little micro habitats that these animals are utilizing. Like a lot of times people talk about, we're keeping, whatever species, and it's 106 degrees in their, when you look up on a weather app or something.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of these animals are in these little micro habitats. And like when we went to Chillago in Australia, we went into these caves, and like outside the caves, it was like 110 degrees, but inside the caves, it was like 78 degrees,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where all
Yeah.
the reptiles were. So
But
I don't know. Maybe I'm it's slower for me to catch on to things. But like when I actually see it, I get it.
yeah.
So.
But that's like a lot of people will do that, and they're like, well, I researched where this animal came from, and it says that it's 98 degrees for half of the year, and it's like, well, the snake's probably not sitting in the hot
Direct
spot in the
sunlight,
direct
yeah.
sunlight. It's probably finding someplace cooler. They are ectothermic, so they're
Right,
not just
yeah.
sitting out there cooking. With the maybe like bearded dragons and some monitors being the exception to the rule, but
Sure,
they're
yeah.
probably not doing that. But then just thinking about that, like exception to the rule, like where we keep a lot of water monitors at Nerd, their basking spot has to be like 120 to 140 degrees, and if you drop below like 100 degrees for a basking spot, they have a tough time digesting their food. So like if
Sure.
I'm sure if people had not done, gone out and seen where these monitors are hanging out and temp gunned it and checked it and that sort of stuff, they probably wouldn't have known that they enjoy these spots that get super super hot for a couple hours, and then they just take off and go do their thing for the rest of the day. Just little things like
Yeah,
that.
man. We went to this my first time we went to Australia. There was this gorge that we went to, and we climbed down into the bottom and whatnot. It's 7 o'clock in the morning, and I took temperature readings of the rocks in the sun, and they were already at like 110 degrees.
Wow.
And it was like, wow. So like these reptiles are coming out basking real quick in the early morning and then heading back for cover until nighttime, and then they're out and about.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Just enough to get them going.
Get them moving.
yeah, 100%. Scrub pythons and carpet pythons were on the move at 72 degrees, I think it was. They had not a worry in the world.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they're active, and they're not even they're taking it like it's nothing. And people in
Yeah.
captivity, they're going, oh my god, it dropped below 80 degrees, my snake's gonna die, and you're like,
It's 78. What do I do?
Yeah. I feel like that's consistently like the biggest thing when it comes to husbandry is like everybody, follows the care guide to a T, and
Yeah.
and like they, for some species, this might be true, but the animals are far more forgiving, dependent upon species, than we sometimes give them credit for. Especially when it comes to temp drops and stuff like that. Like, I mean, I immediately think to stuff like diamonds and Brettles pythons when you're talking about cooling them and everything. You're like, oh man, it's kind of cool though, for one of those right. Australian species. And it's like,
right.
Well, I mean, if you think Australia is 110 degrees
everywhere
all the time,
yeah.
then you might need to get your ass on a plane and go figure it out for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was sort of like West Texas was the same thing. At nighttime, it's like, it was cold, man. It was like 50 degrees.
Oh, shit.
Like,
yeah.
During the day, it's hot, and
yeah.
then like at nighttime, it's like, you have to wear a jacket and you're like, what the hell? This is wild. Yeah.
Yeah,
cool,
Yeah, but when people think about like the southern part of the United States or like the Southwest, even they think of like it's really hot all the time, but it's like that dry heat. So, and they don't talk about at nighttime that crazy temp drop that you can get sometimes, especially during winter time.
Yeah,
even in the fall, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, 100%. One thing that I really took back is like before I left for Australia, I used to say all the time that humidity really didn't matter. With carpet pythons, and I think that carpet pythons are just such a species that are so forgiving of keeper errors that it probably maybe really doesn't hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
But like the humidity that, I mean, it was like 86% humidity at nighttime, and like I have to imagine that somehow that must I think of like respiratory infections and carpets and Morelia and stuff like that, and like a lot of people associate respiratory infections with cold, but to me, I think about myself, and like when it's winter here in the eastern United States, we got all this dry air blowing on us, and like our lungs get dried out, and you get sick. But like I wonder if that's the same thing that happens with these snakes, like they need that humidity to keep their their lungs and stuff moist and whatnot. And I don't know. I just made me think like, I don't know if they necessarily need it or have to have it, but like I have changed that with mine where I offer humidity. I mean, luckily for us here on the eastern U.S., we have humidity kind of built in just by accident.
Yeah.
So, some places it's like zero humidity or whatever out west or.
Oof. Oof.
Poor bastards.
It can be difficult.
Unfortunate for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was the thing that kind of drew you to Morelia in the first place? I mean, like a lot of people see green tree pythons and like, wow, that's like an incredible snake. And it's even to people who aren't really crazy into reptiles, they might see pictures of a green tree python. They might be drawn to it. But carpet pythons, I feel like it's more niche.
Yeah.
What really drew you to Morelia?
Dude, man, they're like, oh my God, I love them so much. Like they come in every color and pattern you can possibly imagine. And like, they're like that perfect size to where they're not too big, but they're big enough to where they're handleable. For the most part, I mean, I don't really have any. I maybe have one carpet that's like, that doesn't want to be held, but for the most part, they're pretty chill as adults. I don't, have they're very keeper forgiving, like I said, because if you look at them in the wild, most of them are in human habitat. They're moving into people's barns and porches and attics and stuff like that. But I don't know, man. I don't know what it was that I wanted to work with something different. I started meeting guys like Owen and Jason Balin and Mike Curtin and like all these guys at the show, and they were just such cool guys, and I'm like, wow, not only are these guys cool, but they're working with cool snakes. And I think it was a tiger carpet at Hamburg that just like sealed the deal for me, man. I was walking down the aisle, and there Jason Balin had this beautiful tiger out on the table, and I'm just like, I'm done.
That's it.
But yeah, the community was so, you know, I don't know, man. It's like you kind of lurked for a little while in like the MP forum, and you kind of this kind of listened to everybody going back and forth about, you know, whatever the topic of the day was back then. But I don't know. It just seemed like they were more into the, I call it the geeky science part of keeping snakes. You know, like the,
Yeah.
you know, it's not just about the paint job on the car. It's about how the engine works underneath. You know, that kind of thing. Like, and that's what I was sort of drawn to. So, yeah, I love them, man. Actually,
Yeah,
they're
I
my
can
favorite.
definitely dig that. I can definitely dig that, man. It's like I just remember, for years going to White Plains, walking by Mike Curtin's table, and like I was already interested in carpets, but then like you meet Mike, and Mike has this really cool thing on the table that's either not for sale or is so highly priced, like you just are gonna stare at it and realize you'll never be able to afford it. And I remember.
Yeah.
So many times walking past his table, like when he was really digging into the ocelot stuff really hard, and he'd be like, "Hey, come here and look at this," and I'd be like, "Oh Jesus, what are you gonna show me now?" And then I see this snake, and I'm like, "You fucker!"
There were multiple
you couldn't help
times.
but see that shit from halfway across the show.
Literally.
Of course. And sometimes
like
I'm not gonna
yellow.
right, and you know I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I asked for it myself. I'd just go right to his table and be like, "All right, what the hell do you got? I don't want it. There's no cat calling me this time, motherfucker. Like, let me just see it now."
Oh my god.
You know, I'm just thinking, like, one of the other things, when I was younger and I was just getting back into reptiles, like, one of this idea that I had is that I wanted to keep as many species of pythons that I could, because I just love pythons.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of went through, you know, I was married at the time, and then I got a divorce. And when I got a divorce, I had to sort of like get rid of my collection and kind of move it out and split it up. And like, I put these carpet pythons in my parents' basement with a hot, like a light, and dude, it got like 50 degrees down there, and like all the other snakes got sick. Carpet pythons, they shed perfectly.
Rock solid.
Like they were perfect. Like they were like just bulletproof, and I'm like, okay, this is the snake for me, you know.
Yeah.
Somebody somewhere in the universe is telling me this is the one.
This is the one. You can make mistakes and it'll be okay.
Right.
Dude, I remember getting a pair of coastals. This is, I don't know how many years ago, but I got them. I won them on a Ben Siegel auction.
Okay.
And they weren't anything, so I don't even have them anymore. But they just, something about them just caught my eye. But the shipment, it was the middle of winter, and the shipment got delayed by 2 days.
Oh shit!
And I was like, "Oh man, these things are goners. You know, absolutely
Right.
goners." So, and I remember my mom and I, like, we were tag team in FedEx. She would be calling them, I'd be calling them at the same time. Where the fuck are these snakes?
Yep.
And dude, I remember. So they came to my house, right? They came to the house. They rang. It was like ding dong ditch.
Oh,
they
yeah.
dropped the box, rang the doorbell, and ran.
Yep.
Right. And by the time I got to the front porch door, they were already driving away, and I'm like shaking my fist like the angry old man. You man, bitch, get off my lawn! But I remember opening up the box, and I was expecting dead animal.
Yep.
And dude, they were basically like lifeless and motionless, but they weren't stiff. So I don't know what made me think about it, but it was like just blow on it, just blow hot air on it. And I did that, and then I saw the tail twitch, and I lost my shit, and both of those snakes lived.
Wow.
It like,
Oh shit!
dude, it blew me away. I just literally took a hair dryer and put it on medium, and then pressed the cool button, and just like gently fucking was hitting them with the cool air, and then slowly warming it up, and they fucking did great.
Wow.
And that for me was like, okay, don't ever get your carpet pythons to 10 degrees. But should it happen,
if it happens,
all you need is a hair dryer, and you should be okay.
You're good. Oh man,
dude, that was intense, because I didn't think they were gonna survive, but that was just another one of those moments of just like, Dude, these things are fucking rock stars. Like, holy crap.
Yeah, man. I know they're not the flashiest and whatever, but like, for me, like I tried to work with ball pythons. I tried working with short tails, like trying to get into like the different things, but like for whatever reason, I just couldn't dial them in. And like I had bad sheds all the time, and like, I just, and I'm like, why am I doing this to stress myself out when like these work great for me? Like they just work. Like they're just dialed in. I think like the most important thing that you can do in this hobby is like pick the snake that you love, or pick the reptile, the animal that you love, and work with it. It doesn't matter if other people think it's cool or not. Make it cool. Like just by you liking it, your enthusiasm about it is gonna make people be like, huh, never thought about that, but maybe I'll check them out. Maybe you like them, maybe you won't.
The perfect example of that, rubber boas. Those things look like fake dog poop, but everyone is losing their mind over them right now. And I'm like, you're excited about the dog poop snake that doesn't have a face? That one? That's the cool one? Okay. I mean, but people are so geeked about them right now. I don't know what it is, man. I don't get it. Like I'm happy that they're excited for their rubber boas, but I just do not get it. I look at it, I'm like, oh, that looks like a gag gift that you would get at like the magic shop. That's like, oh, look at this little pile of dog poop that I found in my yard.
I'm telling you, man, I believe it's somebody somewhere, right? It's talking about rubber boas and how freaking cool they are.
Oh,
right?
that 100%.
Like, dude,
100%.
These are the coolest snakes ever.
Yep.
I'm telling you, man, you gotta get yourself some rubber boas.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, they do this. I put them there. You don't have to.
100%.
List of why you love them. And somebody's like, whoa,
oh damn!
Check out these rubber boas.
Yeah. It's crazy
and now
because
the tidal wave has begun.
It has. I saw them go up for sale and they were sold in 20 minutes. Like I've never, ever, ever would have expected that out of rubber boas. Or like same thing with like Calabar burrowing pythons. Like, I mean, I think that they're an interesting like body shape, but again, just not really a snake that draws my attention in any way.
Right. Yeah, it's weird how that
I think people were just hyping him up so much, but because I know at least a dozen people right now that are like, hey, do you know where I can find rubber boas? I want to buy all the rubber boas I can find, and I'm like, I don't know, man. I can't help you.
I can't help you. I'm sorry.
I can't help you.
Here's a ball python.
I saw one that was for sale. I screenshot it. I sent it to my friend, and he messaged him like 5 minutes later. He was like, it already sold. And I was like, are you kidding me right now?
Yeah.
Dude.
That's wild.
Yeah, like a couple things that I learned doing the podcast over the years is one, like I don't know if you guys have run into this yet, but like over the years you talk to all these different people, and especially when you get people that are super psyched about like what they're working with, and like at the end of the show you're like, man, I really want them.
Yes.
I really want that bad. Like, oh, I wonder who has them. And the other thing is, like, I never understand why, to make your snake or reptile that you like be better, that somehow you have to like make another one be shit.
Less,
I used to argue all the time with the Morelia people, like, they would be saying like the ball python hate and all that stuff, and I'd be like, guys, why do you care? And then I look at somebody like Travis Wyman, who has ball pythons, and like he legitimately is passionate about the genetics of these animals. You know what I mean? Like he's working with the Morse, but he's like passionate about these genetics because he's a geneticist, right? But like this is his thing, right? And so the idea that like just because you're working with Morse, somehow you're like this money hungry person. No, maybe you just like that idea that you're making something like to see how this works or how these two genes play together and you make something cool. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
No, that's a real no, man, that's a real thing. And I mean, like I've definitely said it before. Like, I mean, the day when it comes to ball pythons, the days of being able to like really crush it and make 100% of your living off ball pythons, like those days are gone. You know,
Right.
For most people.
For most people, there's certainly a few exceptions where, you know, there's a handful of people that are still crushing it. But, you know, if you compare that to the late 90s, early 2000s, you know, when literally a single gene spider ball was, you know, 20 grand or something,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like
Right.
those days just, they're not there anymore. You know, I mean, to see a ball python over $10,000 is actually quite rare now these days.
Right.
Which, I mean, I guess thank God for that. But also, you know, but it's interesting because, like, you know, I've said this before on previous episodes, like with ball pythons, I think one of the most untapped parts of that industry is nobody really went down the line of polygenic traits with ball pythons, because it was all about just you know, pairing morphs together and seeing what crazy cool combination you could get, you know, because there was like the lemon pastel, the citrus pastel, you know, there were like different lines of pastel, because for the longest time that was basically it, you know, that existed for morphs.
Right.
But after the morph game really got hot, nobody really bothered to deal with polygenics at all. And I'm like, you know, with the amount of normal ball pythons that were being imported, you'd think that, you know, everybody who was going nuts over those dinkers, you know, would have like seen a project through to fruition a little bit more rather than just jump right onto the morph bandwagon. So I think that is still very much untapped, you know, territory for ball pythons. Because I mean, man, it doesn't really matter what it is. If you show me like a crazy yellow pastel that's just like really clean looking, really nice looking, I'm gonna be like, man, that's a nice looking snake. You know, yellow and black contrast is already going to be eye catching. So if you really dialed that in, you'd be crushing it. You know.
Yeah, it's 100%. Like, who was the guy? I'm trying to think. He was on Reptile Radio. I want to say his name was Albie Too Sure or something like that.
Oh yeah,
Sure Reptile.
Yeah, Albie's Too Cool or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And he used to selectively breed, like, you know, his pastels and stuff. And I remember, like, you know, if you wanted like you know, this certain look in your pastel, like that's the guy to go to. I remember them talking about it. They had him on the show and he was talking about that. He's like, you know, a lot of people just focus on, like, I want to recreate a pinstripe, so I'm just going to breed this to this and make pinstripes, and here's pinstripes. Whereas some people would, you know, like him, you know, but like you're saying, not a lot of people would do this. It's like they would like get the nicest normal that they could find and breed it to the pinstripe, and then all of a sudden your pinstripes pop
look nicer.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So I think there's still some room for that. You know, I think especially as the overall prices of morphs continues to decline, or they kind of like hit their kind of steady bottom dollar, you know, in the retail world, I think you might start to see people just kind of be like, man, like I really do want to produce a crazy cool combo, but, you know, maybe I can't afford it or whatever, but like I really like the look of that, you know, of that pastel or of that pinstripe that's got a really reduced pattern or whatever. And I think maybe at some point you'll start to see some people kind of really dial that in on those polygenic traits, which I think would be cool, because if you get enough of that happening, you know, I mean, we see it with, you know, Cal Kings to get more white out of the, you know, the high white Cal Kings and all that selectively bred stuff. It's just a Cal King. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing extra crazy going on. It's just, you know, 3, 4, 5 generations of line breeding gets you these really insanely high white animals. So I think we might start to see that soon in ball pythons at some point, which I think would be interesting, because then if you do start to throw that into other morphs, you'll see how that changes that interaction, you know, because I mean, I think about a lot of the stuff that we produce at Nerd, you know, some of the combos are not necessarily all that crazy from what other people are producing, but they look noticeably different. And a lot of that has to do with just the fact that, like, Kevin had the original stock and was like dialing that stuff in, and then started to throw the other morphs on top of it. So there's like polygenically bred stuff that was just existing and then thrown into other morphs that never really were line bred for anything specific. So you get all that kind of mashed together and you're like, huh, this looks very different than it should. And then comes the whole brigade of like, it's another gene. What does that dot mean on the second scale down the left side?
Right. It's so crazy. Yeah, I mean, like with carpets, I always looked at jungle carpets, right? And you look and you see what has been done, um, you know, since the wild jungle carpets, and now you see what we're dealing with on this end. And it's like, holy shit, man! It's come so far.
Yeah.
So my thought was, and it's kind of like why I do have jungle carpets, and I bred jungle carpets, but like I've always sort of pushed them to the back burner because I felt that, like, for me, I was like, okay, I want to do this carpet, and like Popwin carpets or IJs or whatever you want to call them. Were sort of like where I was like, if you can make that snake with 2 colors look like that, imagine what you can do with a snake with 3 or 4 colors. Like I can bring out the orange, or I can make it brown. I mean, I have melanistic projects. I have, you know, red projects. I have, yellow, high yellow. Like there's so many different ways that you can go with them. It's just untapped potential. And
yeah,
you know, if I'm the only one that cares about it, then so be it. But I freaking love them. You know, inland carpets are another one. Like the blue that you could bring out, and then and even coastal carpets. Like I think that like the Jag came along and kind of hijacked that selective breeding process that you get with coastal carpets, because it's the same thing we're saying with ball pythons. It's like, well, I just want to produce a Jag.
Yeah.
And then I think of the people that had crazy Jags and how they stood out, and like, guys like Mike and Mo from Mojo Reptiles, and I'm trying to think who else, just off the top of my, Headhunter Reptiles, Andy Parrish, guys like these that like selectively picked out jungles to look a certain way, and like, you can immediately look at an animal and say, oh, that's from this stock.
Right.
Yeah. So
That's when I think about selectively bred stuff. Carpets are definitely the thing that comes to my mind, and then blood pythons too. But carpet pythons for sure. The jungle carpets, going from what they look like naturally to what a lot of them look like in the U.S. now, is just like, it almost looks like 2 different snakes, like 2 different species of snakes.
Yeah, man.
And I'm super excited to see where the IJs go, because I'm not crazy about carpet pythons, but I do love the West Papuans, the IJ carpets, and I've always loved them. But there's really, I mean, there was like Spitfire reptiles back in the day. Yasser had like some really, really nice contrasted animals. But I feel like after jungles kind of got their time in the sun, a lot of people stepped away from doing the IJs and West Papuans, and they just kind of focused on the jungles. And then the Jags came, and they started working on jungle Jags and doing more Jag coastal stuff. And the IJs definitely kind of fell back. And then the Axanthic West Papuans came out, and they're evil, so everyone's afraid of them. And but
yeah, man, they are sons of a bitch.
I don't know what the problem is. I don't know what their problem is, but they have a hair across their ass and they will not let it go. Like everyone that I've met has been a monster jerk.
Yes. 100%.
But I just think of like the orange tones and the yellows and the black on the West Papuans, and like I am super excited to see what people are starting to do with that. With like Steven Katz is just doing some really cool stuff with some imported animals. Carlos over on the other side of the pond doing some cool stuff.
Yep.
Like every time I see some of those guys, and like Corey Woods and stuff, when I see those guys post some of their IJs, I'm like, oh my goodness, that's like only maybe, a couple generations. Just think about like in another 2 or 3 generations, how crazy it's going to be, because they're already starting to zero in on these, like the flames on the sides, or getting more of that intense, rich orange color, or like getting a little bit darker colored in there. And I love all that. So I'm super excited to see what direction that goes in, for me personally. Just I've always found the West Papuans to be my favorite. I was like, oh, they stay a little bit smaller. They're usually a little more friendly than some of the other carpets, so I'm cool with that. And then the Axanthics came and ruined it all. So
I produced a clutch last year of I bred this. I don't know if you guys have ever seen an animal and like it's in somebody else's collection. This has happened to me a couple times. And you're like, at some point in my life, I have to have that animal or something from like an offspring from that animal.
Yes,
100%.
So I would immediately contact the person that has it and say, listen, if you ever, I'm not telling you to sell it, but if you ever decide to sell the snake, please hit me up first.
Yes.
So Dave Kelly had this IJ that sort of was on NP for a long time, and like the banding on this animal is like nothing I've ever seen in my life. Right, this animal has got to be one of my favorite animals in the collection, and he bred her once, and only one of the babies survived. So when I bought the mom, I also bought the baby as well, and like watching that baby grow up, I'm like, holy shit, this thing is amazing. Like, I need to recreate this. So I had animals, the male, the sire of the clutch, I had from an animal that he used the same, like from the same clutch. They were the siblings. I used that. And I didn't even post any of these pictures up yet because I've been hoarding them, because I know as soon as I put them up, everybody's going to be hitting me up.
Yeah.
Dude, the banding on these things is fucking perfect. Sorry, I don't know if you curse or not.
Yes, we do. We
yeah,
fucking do.
Yeah.
Dude, I have never seen the clean bands like this ever in my life. It's oh my God, I'm just like, I can't, I'm like, all 12 of you are probably going to stay here.
Look, now, all I'm saying is you've got my phone number now, so you can send me some pictures, and,
I'll send you pictures. Yeah, no doubt.
He's like, the snake's not happening, but I'll send you a picture.
Yeah, I'll send you the pictures,
But dude, man, like, and that's such the cool, and I learned, like, I've been herping a lot and hanging out the past couple of years with Keith McPeak, and he's been a huge influence on me for like, just the way he thinks and the way he just approaches stuff. It's just like, I'm just in awe of the guy. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just like sitting there like, okay, school's in session. Let me sit down. Go ahead. And like, he's such a humble guy. Like, but his approach is like, he's like, his thing is like, as you guys know, I mean, you short tails and stuff, but like he just selectively bred stuff, and like you can't reproduce it. Only Keith can reproduce it.
Exactly.
You have these animals, and it gives you such an edge.
Yep.
In what you're producing, and like people will come to you because they want that look. Matt Minatola is another guy that I like really look up to when it comes to that kind of stuff, because the shit he's done with Borneos, I mean, dude, he's got to be the best Borneo producer in the world.
Yes.
I mean,
easily.
am I wrong?
Easily, 100%.
No.
Yeah. And he's got that title, and people know if they want to get the nicest Borneos, they go straight to Matt, because his clutches, the stuff that he produces, they speak for themselves. Yeah, he posts it. He doesn't even have to describe. He just posts a picture of it, and everyone's just like, that is incredible.
Yeah, whenever I see a photo dump from Philly Herp, I'm like, all right, I'm going on my lunch break. I need a half an hour to fucking stare at these photos.
Let me just zoom in on this one right here. Why is this one so much different than that one? They're in the same clutch. This is insane. Yeah. Me and Jeremy are just sitting there going back and forth over it. Did you see this one over here?
Yeah, exactly.
But dude, check this out. The craziest thing is, like, he will call me up and he's like, yo, Eric, I got to sex these Borneos. Would, come over and give me a hand? And, like, he's, I get bit to shit, and, like, I'm pissed on, and, like, you probably sex Borneos and short tails. But I don't give a shit, man.
Yep.
Because I'm getting to look at these animals like nobody else can look. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I'm right there. And to me, that's just like, I guess, like doing the podcast and stuff, it's afforded me these opportunities to meet, these great people. And like, Matt should have an ego that's like, it's huge, but he's just such a chill guy. You know what I mean?
Yes.
He's the same way. And like, just hanging out with these guys, you're just like, wow, like, you're just a normal dude. Okay, here we go. All right.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, I'll give you a secret here, and we should not share this with anyone. But Dan Magano is another short tail guy, and he comes up to have me sex his baby short tails because he's in Connecticut, so Nerd is an hour and change from him. So whenever he produces stuff, he sexes them, and he has me double check them and tell him what I think and everything. But whenever he comes up to me, I don't get bit. And you want to know how I do it?
How do you do it?
You tube them like a venomous snake. So you get like a little plastic tube that's like 1.5 feet long. You feed them into there and then pop them while they're in there. You get peed on, but you don't get bit. I love it. You know what I used before was paper towel tubes because you can actually pinch it so that if they are smaller than the tube, they can't turn back around and get you.
Genius.
Secrets.
Man,
Secrets.
saved me a lot of blood, man.
That stays between us.
Yeah. So Matt always tells me, he's like, approach it like a venomous snake.
Yep.
You know, but like I don't think, like, I don't know. I'm just like, okay. And then
I'll just hold it. Yeah.
Yeah. Me, and I'm just like, wow, I'm glad I don't have venomous anymore.
It's a very different world when.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sheesh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what type of stuff did you keep when you kept venomous?
So I'm super lucky, man. I talked to a lot of people, and like, you know, a lot of them, their parents were not into reptiles. My dad is the complete opposite, right? He was so hog wild into reptiles my whole childhood that's all that I was around. And like, he kept, let's see, Eastern diamondbacks, Western diamondbacks, gaboon vipers, tree vipers, water moccasins, copperheads, cobras, monocle cobras. Monocle cobras. Trying to think what else he had. A couple different. He had sidewinders, a couple other different types of rattlesnakes and such.
That's awesome.
I know. I'm forgetting stuff, but like he just had so much, like so many. He had Indian pythons, which like,
wow,
man, if we had them today, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
yeah,
for real.
But yeah, so that's kind of like most of the stuff was probably, I would say the majority of the stuff was rattlesnakes or vipers is really what it was.
That's cool, man. So you were exposed to that early on.
Oh yeah. Like I'm 10 years old. I remember my dad was so he built this cage in our basement, and in the bottom part of the cage, and this cage had to be like, I guess it was like maybe 15 feet long.
Wow.
It was a wooden cage that he built.
Oh my
and he
God.
put a kid pool in the one side.
Yeah.
And you know, it's funny. It's like, I think of like what my dad did and like that generation of herpers. And like, they didn't have radiant heat panels or like, you know, lights and, you know, you had to make it work with what you had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he put this kid pool, and he had a caiman that he had in there, and you know, that stayed in the bottom. And then he built like an above part of it, and that's where he had the Indian pythons.
Wow.
And the one day he went to feed it, and he, you know, did the old throw the rabbit into the dead rabbit, and the snake just sees your hand and it wraps them. And this thing, it had to be, I don't know, between 15 and 18 feet. It was a huge snake.
Wow.
And because back then the cool thing to do was feed snakes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like all the snakes were fat back then. But you know, he's yelling, Eric, you need to come down. You need to come downstairs. And I'm just like, what's the matter? Just come down. And I'm just like, okay. I'm walking down the steps. There's my dad with this 18-foot Burmese or Indian python wrapped around his and he's like, you got to help me get it off. I'm like,
what?
I'm freaking 10 years old. What do you mean? We got it off, though.
Sheesh.
That's gold.
Trial
Oh,
by
God.
fire, man.
Literally,
sure.
though. Literally. How deep's the deep end? Well, now it's deeper.
Yeah. Dude, I think about people nowadays because I get a lot of people who contact Nerd and they're looking for like their first pet snake and they want a ball python and they're like, I want to get like a boy because it stays smaller. And I'm always like, I hate to break it to you, but like some of the biggest ball pythons I've ever seen in my life were actually males. There's like a thing in the like 90s where a lot of guys who rode motorcycles like to have a snake around their neck while they're riding their bike. And so they wanted to have like a big ball python because berms are too big to like ride around with. So a lot of people I met, I shouldn't say met, but people I saw who had ball pythons, they had these 5 and 6 foot long giant ball pythons, because what they would do is they'd invite all their biker buddies over to their house to watch them feed their snake, and they would make it a weekly thing where they get a giant rat or a rabbit or something, and then everyone came around and watched the snake eat. So they had these 6 foot long, bigger than a Coke can ball pythons, these monster things, and they'd be like, "Oh, I think it's a girl," and then you go to pop it, and there's these giant sperm plugs, and you're like, "Jesus, this is the biggest boy I've ever seen in my life." Sheesh. And I'm like, man. That's just how it is, though. So a lot of people, they're like, "I want a boy because it's going to be smaller." I'm like, if you feed it like it's going to be smaller, your girl's not going to get giant. But if you feed them like you want them to be big, they'll get big. So honestly, it has more to do with how you keep them than whether or not it's a boy or a girl.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I think about that male double het candy pied.
Oh my God!
That
yeah.
we have, and Kev was like, Where's the male?
Where's the male?
Where's the male?
We forgot him.
Did we leave him somewhere? And then I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure it's that thing right there. He's like, no, it's too big. It's too big. Sure enough, pop it and
giant
and you're
male.
Like, oh,
he's 5 foot long. You're like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, exactly. And he was like, that's the male. I was like, that's a big boy.
That's awesome.
Oh,
because usually with. It's certainly true. I think just about every species, you get the male too big, they're just not gonna. They're not really gonna do anything.
Lazy, good for nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Not want to breed anybody.
Yeah.
With carpets, I keep my males surprisingly small to people.
Yeah.
Like really small, and they're like, what?
Yeah.
Wait.
Like,
what?
he's not 6 foot long. What are you doing wrong? And you're like, no, he breeds
man.
every year for me.
Yeah, he's crushing it.
Yeah. I can't. I don't know, man. And I thought for a long time that I was doing it wrong, and then I bought a couple adults from Nick Mutton,
mm-hmm.
and when he sent them to me, they were males, and I opened it up, and as soon as I opened up the snake bag, I'm like, okay, I feel good now.
Dude, we've got this group called Let Me Ask My Wife, and it's basically just like a sellers group for people who work with. So you see where this is going. So it's called. I'll add you to the group because it's really funny. But it's just for people who are people who buy and sell snakes, and it's where you can kind of vent all the stupid questions that you get, and the people who are like, how many grams is this baby snake? And you're like, it's eating fuzzy mice. That's all you need to know. It's a baby carpet python. It's okay. But someone posted in there, and they were like, am I the only person that's fed up with people about asking for the gram weights of my baby snakes? And there was a couple people who were like, well, I ask that at everything that I buy because there's a big difference. And I just wrote on there, I was like, nope, you guys are being dumb. You need to know what it eats, and then everything else is irrelevant. Right. It's not relevant. Yeah. But I'll add you to that group.
Tell me that the snake is feeding.
Yeah, it is eating consistently.
Care about anything else.
That's what I care about. But that group can be a riot sometimes.
That is very true.
Because everyone who sells snakes has got that story of the guys. Asking you questions. Oh, what is it eating? Where does it come from? You give them all this information. You send them pictures. You do this. Oh, okay, cool. Let me ask my wife, and then you never hear from them again. They just disappear into the ethos.
Yep. At the reptile shows, those are the guys that are like, yeah, let me just go around one more time.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow. My least favorite part of the whole reptile hobby is selling snakes.
Yeah,
dude,
for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
100%.
Yep. It never gets better.
I want to be like Gary Valle so bad to where you need to know somebody to contact me. You know what I mean? I want to be that guy. Everybody wants his carpet pythons, but you don't know his email address, so
you ain't getting them.
Man. Yeah. I don't know if you're in the circle or not.
Yep.
You need a special code or something.
That's the ultimate goal.
Yes,
man. That's
to not have to advertise,
dude. That's Steve.
Yep.
All day. It's hey man, look, do you want this? Because I don't want to
deal with that.
I can't deal with that. And you're like, I got you, bro.
I got you.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I just gave Owen all my Jags. I kind of got out of Jags because I was like, I kind of, you know, I guess I could say I don't know. I didn't think I talked about this briefly on NPR, but it was like, I will start this by saying that, I have bred Jags. They have bred. They have eaten. They have 100% lived life to the fullest without issues or problems or anything like that. It's just that they're a little goofy, a little off.
They're
You know
very
what I mean?
goofy.
And so, like, it just really comes down to for like my thought on that whole back and forth debate about whether it's right or wrong or whatever. It's like it really just comes down to your individual feeling, and
Yeah.
like for me, I got tired of like hatching out snakes and like it would be the most beautiful snake and then it's upside down or something like that.
Yeah.
And then I was just like, oh man, this just isn't for me anymore. So Owen is like that's like this best part of being the co-host of the podcast. He's like the first person to get anything that I'm just like, here, just take it.
Just get rid of that. Here, take it away.
Take this exotic Jag, take this. I spend thousands of dollars on this shit. Just take it, leave and go.
That's essentially what's happening with me and Rob.
Yeah.
Really?
It's like, hey, I produced all these Borneos. What do you need?
Raise this thing up for me.
Raise that up. And it's like, yeah, sure.
See, the cool thing about that is it's like where it's at. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You ever
100%.
decide later on down the line maybe I'll give these Jags a shot again. Hey Owen, I want one of them Jags. He can't tell me no. I gave them all to you. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
It's a good spot to be in. So.
Oh, most definitely.
For sure. I think that's one of the things that it's good to be invested or involved in your community locally when it comes to reptiles, especially if you find people who are into the same things that you're into. When you kind of get to build those relationships, people used to do it at Reptile Expos, but now it's a lot harder with COVID and everything. But as you're getting connected and making those friendships and doing those sort of things, if you have something you don't really want to sell, but you're running out of space and doing this or doing that, you can be like, hey, I trust you, raise this up, see what you can do with it. And then, if you do need it down the line, if you have people that you can trust, they're going to reach out and help you out. And that's something that is not as, I don't know, it's not really as widespread in the ball python community because everyone's just trying to make that next new morph. And you can't have this because F you, and I'm going to do it first and blah, blah, blah. But I feel like in a lot of the other communities, like the carpet community and the short tail community, they're more invested in seeing people just do well and make these snakes that everybody enjoys. And that's something I like about them.
Yeah, I think what I like about the short tail world, right, is that first of all they're beautiful snakes, and I think I remember the first time I was hanging out with Rob Stone, he used to do a whole lot of he would go to cam and he would be able to pick through all this stuff and whatnot, and then he would sort of establish it and sell it. But some of the short tails that he had, man, or came across, or are just insanity.
Yeah,
and I'm just he would tell me, he's like, when I would talk about dinker things and dinker carpets and dinker ball, these things that maybe you could take in a direction or whatever, he would say he would always say to me Eric, there's no snake, no python that is like the short tail python because they are so variable,
incredibly,
so variable. You could do so many projects with this. Could be on equal playing field to say ball python morph wise, dare I say?
Yes.
Because there's just so much untapped potential there, and it sort of reminds me of this. It's this little niche of pythons that sort of is like the carpets in a way, but they're completely different. You know what I mean? So it's do you like long skinny snakes or do you like short fat snakes?
Chubby.
But it's sort of in the same thing. But yeah. I mean, that's sort of what led to Carpet Fest, what you were saying, Owen and I were chatting, and I was just like, dude, we should do a barbecue and get together and have have like all the local people that are near us. Like, let's just hang out and like not be on a computer talking to each other, and like let's learn about each other, and like what, maybe we become good friends with some people or whatever. Like
Yeah.
if you're at a show, you really can't like talk to people about stuff because you always feel like they're trying to make sales, and there you are like, excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
I'd like to
My
know
name
about
is
this.
Eric.
Yeah.
I'd like to know about
you're
this
so
pos head
cool, man.
albino, albino carp python, please.
Get the hell away from my table.
Yeah,
dude.
right. Dude, well, you know what's funny is after my first Carpet Fest, I remember leaving and I was just like, dude, this for me is what the industry really is about.
The real bones of the industry.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like,
hell yeah.
We've talked before, and like a lot of times people at Tinley are basically like, man, like this is this
is my family.
It's just the family. It's the family reunion. We get together twice a year, kind of deal.
Right.
But really outside of that, it doesn't really happen.
Doesn't happen. No.
And now if it happens, it's just because everybody's too hyped up about social media, and they're like, hey man, I'm going to come to your place, but I'm going to film a bunch of videos.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not just going to come and hang out
and talk snakes
and talk about snakes. Yeah. So I really feel like Carpet Fest is literally that embodiment of what the industry truly is, and obviously it's done amazingly well, seeing as how it happens in 3 different parts of the country
and also around the world.
Yeah.
yeah,
exactly.
I know, right?
I'm super pumped about that, and I'm excited for when Carpet Fest can happen again, so I can go to the OG. We went to Southeast, but I need to hit the original.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, come on, man. As a short tail guy, you're gonna be.
I know.
And like,
Dude, I think that was like the worst decision I could have ever made. Going out there and be like, yeah, I'm gonna go to Matt's place, and you're like, I'm glad I left the credit cards at home.
Yeah. Oh man. So we're winding down our time right now. I know it's quick. It's not as long as NPR, but we're winding down our time. But at the end of our episodes, we like to ask our guests one question, the one question to rule them all.
Okay.
What in the realm of reptiles, be it something that you're working with or something that you've seen somebody else working with or just something interesting that you've seen on social media, what is something in the realm of reptiles that's got you excited about reptiles?
Oh, something that's got me excited about reptile.
Yeah, something you saw and you're like, oh, that right there, that's it. That's the thing.
Owen Pelly pythons.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
How did I know?
I mean, yeah. Dude, I mean, it's such a rare snake to be able to see it in the wild, and then
just keep rubbing it in.
to meet up with Gavin, Bedford.
Yeah.
Somebody that I'm like reading his papers and shit, and like now I'm sitting here having a beer with him and eating crocodile parmesan, which by the way is the most delicious parmesan of anything you will ever eat in your life.
Amazing.
I promise you, it's delicious. Anyway.
Oh man.
So, and there we are at Crocosaurus Cove, like right outside there at this bar, just shooting the shit. And then, he takes us over to we're telling him like, oh yeah, we kind of struck out with finding a Darwin carpet. And he takes us on a ride. We go to the botanical gardens. 10 minutes later, there's one up in the tree. And he's like, come on guys, I'm going to show you something. So we go around the corner there, and sure enough, he freaking pulls out an Owen Pelly python. Dude!
God.
Are you kidding me? He's like, yeah, I produced these last year. I'm like, come on,
son of a bitch.
Jeez.
I get to hold it?
Oh, man. Oh,
come on.
I'd be so geeked.
I think there's like 5 people in the United States that can say that they actually held an Owen Pelly python. I mean, come on. It's wild.
Yeah.
I don't know. Snakes are so cool.
Hell yeah.
So cool. But
that is mint.
Hell yeah, dude.
So awesome. All right, so if people want to find out more about you and the things that you're doing and throw out all of your social media stuff, plug what you're going to plug.
Sure. For me personally, ebmorelia.com. That's my website. I'm sort of like trying to make that sort of the hub where I make everything come out of. You can follow me on social media under all that stuff, either one, Instagram, Facebook. And then for the podcast, it's all under Morelia Python Radio. The website's MoreliaPythonRadio.com. I would say this, if you're interested in Morelia, I try to make that like a hub. It's got all the morphs on there. It's got all the subspecies on there. It's got like natural history on there, books and stuff. You know, just try to make it simple so you can go there, and if you're interested in learning more about it, can point you in the right direction to go. So, yeah.
Hell yeah.
Bam.
So thank you very much for coming on tonight, man.
Hell
We
yeah, dude.
appreciate it, and we're going to have you on again.
Yeah, anytime.
Sweet.
Hell yeah.
All right, man. Have
All
a
right,
nice
dude.
night.
All right. See you.